Today, we're digging into the story of a ruler who literally shaped the world of the New Testament. And yet, chances are, you've probably never even heard his name.
When you think about first-century Judea, your mind probably jumps to the big names, right? Roman legions, Herod the Great, all that. But have you ever stopped to ask who actually built the powerful, independent Jewish kingdom that Rome eventually had to deal with?
Well, here's the twist. The architect of that world wasn't a Caesar or some Roman general. He was a Jewish high priest and king named John Hyrcanus. And his story? Well, it kicks off with an absolute bloodbath.
See, Hyrcanus was never supposed to be king. His father, Simon Maccabeus, was the celebrated leader who had finally won independence for Judea. But that freedom was brand new, it was fragile, and betrayal was lurking way too close to home.
So picture this, it's 134 BC. Hyrcanus' own brother-in-law, a man named Ptolemy, invites the whole family to a feast. But it's a trap. He has Simon and two of Hyrcanus' brothers murdered right there at the banquet, all in a bid to seize power for himself. The only reason John Hyrcanus survives is pure chance. He just happened to be somewhere else. In a single night, he loses almost everyone and is suddenly thrown into a fight for his nation's survival and his own.
So, after he barely escapes his family's fate and manages to secure Jerusalem, you'd think he might get a moment to breathe. Nope. An even bigger threat came knocking. The massive Seleucid Empire saw all this chaos as the perfect chance to just wipe Judea off the map for good.
The Seleucid king himself, Antiochus VII, marches a huge army right up to the gates of Jerusalem. Hyrcanus and his people are trapped inside. They're besieged for over a year, food is running out, and it really looked like the dream of an independent Judea was about to be snuffed out.
But Hyrcanus was smart. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a negotiator. He manages to hammer out a truce. Now, it was costly, sure, but it kept Judea alive. And then, a stroke of unbelievable luck. Antiochus VII gets himself killed fighting the Parthians way out east. Suddenly, the entire Seleucid Empire is thrown into chaos. Hyrcanus sees his moment, and he takes it. He declares total, absolute independence. Just like that, the whole game had changed.
Now with his main rival gone, Hyrcanus doesn't just, kick back and enjoy the peace. No way. He goes on the offensive. He transforms his small, battered nation into a regional powerhouse through one brilliant and, frankly, brutal military campaign after another. First up, he marches north into Samaria. Now, the Samaritans had been religious rivals for centuries. They'd even built their own competing temple on Mount Gerizim. Hyrcanus doesn't just conquer them, he besieges their holy site and razes it to the ground. It was a massive statement that solidified Jerusalem's status as the one true center of worship.
Next, he turns south to Idumea. And what he does here is radical. It's totally unprecedented. He conquers the Idumeans and then forces the entire population to convert to Judaism. Now, why does this one decision matter so much? Because decades later, a guy from an elite Idumean family, a descendant of these very converts, is going to be put on the throne by Rome. And you've definitely heard of him. His name was Herod the Great.
Hyrcanus kept pushing. He went north again, this time into Galilee, which was a region with a real mix of Jews and Gentiles. He sets up Jewish settlements, builds up towns, and brings the whole area firmly into the Judean fold. So, when you read about the heavily Jewish Galilee of Jesus and his disciples a century later, yeah, Hyrcanus is the guy who made it that way. He literally set the stage.
And he didn't stop there. He took control of Perea, east of the Jordan River, and dominated the coastal plains, grabbing vital seaports like Joppa. The bottom line is, in just a few decades, he expanded Judea to its largest size since the glory days of King Solomon. It was incredible.
But being a ruler isn't just about winning wars. Hyrcanus was also the high priest, the religious leader of the nation. And the political moves he made at home would end up creating deep divisions that would haunt Judea for generations.
The story goes, according to the historian Josephus, that it all went wrong at a banquet. Hyrcanus had been a big supporter of the Pharisees, who were a really popular group. But at this dinner, one of them publicly insults him, questioning if he's really fit to be high priest. One comment, that's all it took, to cause a massive, irreparable break.
Hyrcanus was furious. He completely cut ties with the Pharisees and threw all his support behind their biggest rivals, the Sadducees. So who were these groups? Think of the Pharisees as a popular movement. They were all about the law and tradition, and they had a lot of sway with the common people. The Sadducees, on the other hand, were the wealthy, priestly elite who ran the temple. By siding with them, Hyrcanus basically drew a line in the sand, deepening a political and religious fight that would define Jewish life for the next 100 years.
So after all the wars, the politics, the expansion, what was the final legacy of John Hyrcanus? What did he leave behind?
Well, he ruled for an amazing 30 years, from 134 all the way down to 104 BC. That's a remarkable period of stability and growth in a very unstable world.
So on one hand, he left behind a strong, fully independent kingdom, with borders bigger than they'd been in centuries, and a booming economy. He brought new people, like the Idumeans, into the nation. But, and it's a big but, he also left behind a ticking time bomb. That bitter, deep-seated conflict between the Pharisees and Sadducees, a conflict that would eventually help tear his kingdom apart.
And that really brings us to the final question, doesn't it? Was John Hyrcanus this great hero, the builder of a nation who restored its glory, or was he the architect of the very divisions that would weaken it and ultimately pave the way for Rome to walk right in? The truth, as it so often is probably somewhere right there in the middle.